Welcome to the House of Takes pod. This is our first ever super late night show. So bear with us as we might have some technical difficulties along the way. But definitely looking forward to tipping this off, if you will, tonight. Now, this is a trial run show. We're just giving it a shot. We've got about 15 minutes to an hour to discuss what is happening in your National Basketball Association. On today's show, we are going to talk Damian Lillard. We're going to talk about Wemby getting shut down and whether or not that was the correct move by the San Antonio Spurs. I'm also going to make an argument for you that I think I have actually seen the actual next National Basketball Association superstar. And of course, I am talking about one Scoot Henderson, as I'm already losing my voice just 2 minutes into the late night broadcast. We also are going to talk a little bit about James Harden. And I want to talk about the most ridiculous thing I heard all day related to Zion Williamson. And that involves an absolutely idiotic thing that Rick Bucher put out earlier in the day. So it is if you will, full show. Now, the question is, will anybody actually show up to this? But that being said, just going to go ahead and record. Hopefully along the way, we will get some questions and some people will actually show up to this broadcast. I mean, we are a new channel. About a month and a half in, we've got 650 plus subscribers, I think, last time I checked. And definitely in the growth area. All right, let's kick things off with whether or not the San Antonio Spurs should have actually shut down Wemby. Now, after Wemby's 27-point performance, I guess a lot of people thought it was a good idea just to go ahead and shut him down inside the San Antonio Spurs organization. Now, Summer League historically, and when I'm talking about historically with regards to Summer League, really over the last 5 years, if you're a number one, basically, if you're a top 5 pick in the National Basketball Association, you will get shut down usually after a game or two. With that being said, not terribly surprising that the San Antonio Spurs went ahead and made that decision to go ahead and shut down Wemby. I want to know what you think, if anybody else is out there, if whether or not Wemby should actually be shut down or not. I mean, I just sort of look at this and I think, okay, here's a guy that hasn't really played basketball in the United States, has pretty much just played international basketball, and the rules are different. I mean, they just are. We saw Wemby in the first game, and then we saw Wemby in the second game. And while Wemby played better in the second game, do we really believe that Wemby is really ready to handle the pounding of 82 games in the National Basketball Association? So the decision by Wemby to not play for France this year in FIBA, to actually go to San Antonio, buy himself a house or an apartment or whatever, get himself situated, and then hit the weight room and work on his conditioning seems to make a lot of sense. Because I think what I saw out there on the basketball court over the first couple days wasn't like that far away from where Bol currently is. In fact, I would even say that Bol is more coordinated at this point. So I think there's definitely a reason to shut him down, and it makes sense. I personally would have loved to have seen him play at least one more game just to sort of gain that in-game experience. But I think that's something that the San Antonio Spurs organization can do for him anyways in San Antonio in a much a safer environment. What will be key for Wemby, though, right now, is to actually put on some weight, to continue to work on his jump shot, and to gain strength in his lower body. Because the National Basketball Association, while we're no longer in the 80s or 90s, is still significantly more brutal from a bruising perspective than any other kind of style basketball that you will find throughout the world. All right. So next up, moving on to Damian Lillard. And what do I think Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers are up to these days? Now, their GM came out a little earlier tonight and basically said it could take months to get a deal done. I think that right there, that statement is a direct shot at Damian Lillard and his agent, Aaron Goodwin. Aaron Goodwin is one of the great agents in the National Basketball Association, and he's been around for, well, let's just say quite some time. Probably about as long as I've been watching the association, Aaron Goodwin has been around. He is a wise agent. He also did his whole reached out to a bunch of other teams and said, don't even consider trading for Damian Lillard because he doesn't want to go. So the situation as it stands today sort of seems like my kids when they were younger, when they were pouting, when they wanted some ice cream before bed. That is exactly what this sort of sounds like. Now, I don't blame Damian for wanting to leave Portland. The Portland Trailblazers have done him a disservice, especially over the last 4 years. And as smart of a basketball player and as smart as a basketball professional as Chauncey Billups is, I'm not entirely sure he has proven to us yet that he is a really good head coach. I sort of like look around the association at other coaches. And when you see what other coaches are able to do with less talent than the Portland Trailblazers have had over the last couple years, I really start to wonder, what is it exactly that Chauncey Billups is going to need to actually be a really good head coach in the National Basketball Association? So as for Damian Lillard himself, I would simply say that at this point, I think something's going to get done sooner than months from now. But the threat of months from now is exactly what it is. Look, I think the Miami Heat need to get this done sooner than later. It is better to get him acclimated inside the Miami Heat organization now than to wait for a few more weeks. And if you're the GM of the Portland Trailblazers, maybe you're saying for a few months, which just puts you into that Kevin Durant traded to the Suns in the middle of the season category. And we all know how that turned out for the Suns this past year, don't we? All right. So switching topics, if you are watching this and you're out there, if you have any comments or anything like that, please drop them in. Hopefully those comments will actually show up in my feed here. I'm using some service to make this stuff all happen. Anyways, so a couple other topics I wanted to cover before we get out of here tonight on our very first inaugural House of Takes pod live broadcast late night. We'll be doing these every night, late night, sometime between 10 and midnight will be the broadcast. That's what Yoda would say, I think. And hopefully we'll get some people to show up to this thing. That being said, next up, I wanted to talk about James Harden just for a little bit. Now, James Harden, I think, is going to make an effort to actually remain with the Philadelphia 76ers. Look, after seeing him at that white party over the weekend, over last weekend, and watching James Harden's interaction with the players on his team that were actually there, I'm sure Joel Embiid pulled James aside. Because let's face it, Joel Embiid wants to win now. And he's got a really nice nucleus there when you think about it. He's got Tobias Harris, he's got Maxey, he's got a bunch of other nice young pieces there. But for James Harden to be ripped away from the Philadelphia 76ers, and let's just face it, they aren't going to get anything back of a similar value to James Harden unless something wacky happened and Damian Lillard finally fell in love with the city of brotherly love and decided to grant his agent, Aaron Goodwin, permission to talk to the Philadelphia 76ers organization, which I don't think is actually going to happen. So I think James Harden ultimately will end up staying with the actual Philadelphia 76ers in this case. Okay. So two other quick topics I wanted to cover this evening that I thought were worth covering. We're going to get into the Rick Bucher, Zion Williamson thing here just in a second. But first I wanted to talk about Scoot Henderson. And I try not to overreact. Like, I tried not to overreact to Wemby's first performance, and I certainly tried not to overreact to Wemby's second performance. You have to remember, this is summer league basketball, and you're playing against a different sort of level of competition. It's a different level of competition than you're actually going to see once you enter the association. And for Wemby's game to actually do well in summer league, that's what I would expect. Now, for Scoot Henderson to actually do what he did in the first half of his first game before he got injured was just fantastic. I mean, he looks ready to become the National Basketball Association's next superstar. He absolutely looks like he's ready to take the Portland Trailblazers organization. And I want to point this out, regardless of whatever else they have, and take them to a different level at some point during his career. He can go left. He can go right. He runs downhill. That is by far one of the best ways of talking about Scoot Henderson is he's one of those players that actually runs downhill on a flat basketball court. Look, I haven't seen anybody play like that since young Russell Westbrook. I don't want to say right now that he's going to be the next Russell Westbrook. I'm sure he'll have a slightly different game. And of course, injuries also play a role into all of this. But in his first half of a summer league game, which, by the way, for a player like Scoot Henderson is a lot closer to what he'll actually see in the National Basketball Association than what Wemby saw because of their style of play. That being said, Scoot Henderson just dominated 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists in the game. And the eye test just simply does not lie. Look, I don't know what's in the water over at the Ignite team in the G League, but they should be bottling that Gatorade. And by the way, I had one of those prime drinks finally. And it's just so sugary. I'm just saying, it was actually too sweet. All right. So Scoot Henderson, I really believe that. Let me know what you think. Drop your comments in. We'll go ahead and save this recording and just publish it as well. So let me know what you think about that. And finally tonight, a good old Rick Bucher was up to it again a little bit earlier in the day. And he came out and he said in a report, reportedly, Zion Williamson has no interest. He has no interest in developing a floater or a pull-up jumper. This coming from Rick Bucher, who is currently over at Fox Sports. This has to be the most ridiculous thing I heard all day. And I heard some other ridiculous things as well. I mean, seriously, the report that Zion Williamson is not willing to work on his jumper has to be just a bunch of false narrative that was put out by somebody that is trying to get something from the New Orleans Pelicans organization and or is trying to, I don't know, blackmail Zion Williamson for some additional baby money. Look, I don't know anything about that, but this just doesn't sound right. When was the last time? Okay, the floater part aside, when was the last time you heard there was a player in the National Basketball Association who averaged over 20 points a game and didn't want to work on their jumper? I mean, this has to be the biggest piece of trash that I've seen anybody put out about another National Basketball Association player in quite some time. Rick Bucher, you win the award for the trashiest comment of the day. All right. That is it for our first inaugural live broadcast of the House of Takes pod. We will be back tomorrow night, so we'll catch you sometime between 10 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. as well. Thanks so much for tuning in to the House of Takes pod. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel for the House of Take pod. I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing night.